friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tammy Ernest and I am a longarm quilter, and here on my channel I like to share customer finishes as well as my own personal projects. So it's been a busy week here around our home and in our business here. We've had colds going around the family, so I'm sure you can tell that in my voice, and I hope I don't cough my way through this. If so, I'll just postpone it and do it another day. But it's been quite the crazy week. We've had colds in our family, and for us, we have one that has trouble with asthma, and his only trigger has always been a respiratory infection. So when he starts a cold, then we're doing extra breathing treatments, and we're doing pulse oximeters, and I've been sleeping on the couch and making sure he's breathing, and calls to the doctor. So it's been quite the week. And then others have had colds as well, and we had Father's Day over the weekend, and we had planned a special day at State Park close by after church. We're going to go to the State Park in the afternoon with some of the kids sick. I stayed home in the morning, and while the others went on to church. But then I had to go to the park. I had to leave the sick ones here because I had to get to the park because one of our other sons was proposing to his girlfriend while we were there, and it's just been that kind of a week. Car's been in the shop. We did get our oil down on our road this week. If you live in the country, you understand that we live on a gravel road, and the dust is incredible until they come and lay the oil. Our county does a half and half with the homeowners if you want oil down, and we have to. We live so close to the road that dust just coats everything. So I'm so glad that got done, but it's been a crazy week. But I have got some things done. I've got some customer shares, customer quilts to show you today. And I also have my June blocks done on my So Scrappy spools. So let me show you that. This is the pattern. This is available through Fat Quarter Shop. As I've mentioned before, this is a Lori Holt pattern that Fat Quarter Shop is using for this year-long quilt-along. And for the June blocks, let me find the name of them. These are called patchwork blocks. Yeah, the So patchwork blocks. So let me see if I can show you in the picture. I don't think there were, oh yes there are. So right here, this one right here is the patchwork blocks. So that's what I've been working on this week, and I have been using my bin of scrap fabrics. I don't think we're getting any lower. I don't know, I just don't feel like I am using up a whole lot, even though I am. It's just, you would think by the number of blocks that I have that my fabrics would be going down in here, but I don't see them going down too much. So this is the stack of blocks I already have done. This is January through May. So let me show you my June blocks, and then I want to give you some pointers on these. So here's my first one. I did a blue in the middle of that one with the gray, and then the orange. You use two different fabrics. So these four right here are one, and then these outer triangles here are a second fabric. Mine looks a little different because they're such small pieces that you can tell these are from the same fabric, but this one actually is too. It's just the way the fabric got cut for those triangles, why it doesn't quite look the same fabric, but it's the same line. And then the light green around there. Then here was my second one. This one's really pretty. This one, again, reminds me of like ocean, Florida ocean and sky. And this is actually a green also, although it looks a little yellow there. But it's a very light mint type of green. Then my third one is some grays and blacks. This is a black, just a tone on tone, but then I used a batik for those four. Almost looks like eyes or something there, doesn't it? And then this one's probably my favorite. I love reds, especially these deeper reds. And so I have a yellow triangle in the middle, a little bit of a white basket weave type print there, then the reds, and then the gray gingham for the outside ones. So if you noticed, the top of the bottom of the spools, I use the same brown fabric for all blocks for that month. So this is being June, I just pick one brown fabric, and that's the fabric that I use for all of the blocks for June. Now I did use this brown fabric a couple of months ago with some other blocks, but I'm getting down to the point in the basket. I have some other browns, but like this one, I just didn't think this one would look good as the spools. I'm trying to keep it that darker brown. So I've used this one. That's the one I used this month. I've used this one. I used this one last month. What other one did I use? Oh, I don't know if I have any more of this one left, but you can see this brown. But I don't see any of that one left. And so some of these other browns that are in my basket, I just didn't feel that they matched. I might be able to use this one, because really you're only gonna see about a 2-inch strip along there. So this one kind of blends with that one. I might be able to use that one. I don't know. Some of these browns I just don't think are gonna work. This one, I don't really like that one. I have some, this one might work. This is more of a black and a taupe, but that doesn't look too bad. I might use that as one of the tops of my spools for one of these months, but I'm gonna have to repeat, and I may even have to go to another basket and pull some more browns because I just don't see enough in here. Now this one might work. Here's another one I just dug farther. A little more of a reddish brown, but that one might work. And this one's similar to that one up there. These were like, you can see that, like a leaf print, outdoorsy type prints. Not my favorite, but they work because they're only using a couple inches across there. Here's another one, another brown. I just don't know that these stripe type ones are gonna work. So I may have to pull, I still have 6 months left in this quilt along, so I may have to pull from another basket to get enough browns to finish all the spool tops. But anyway, so I used the birdie one. That's actually some little birds flying on there. That's what I used this month. Now, another hint I wanted to show you is when you are laying out these blocks, when you're looking at the pattern, it's a tendency to lay out this block just the way it is. But if you will notice, each one of these 4 is the exact same block. They're just turned a different way. So when I was laying this out to do the piecing, I actually stacked all of these green corners up together. And then these are half square triangles. You actually lay the two squares on top of each other and sew across and then fold back. So you make 8 of those, and so these 2 are actually the same block right here and the same piecing. So what I would do when I laid it out next to my sewing machine, I stacked these green ones up in one stack. I stacked 4, because you need 4 of them. 4 of these in this direction with the orange print pointing in, 4 of these here, and 4 of these with the orange pointing in towards the center. And then I just grabbed one of these, ran it through my sewing machine. And all 4 of them I did that way. So grabbed 2 of these, ran it through the sewing machine, 2 again. I did those 4 all at the same time. And then I grabbed these 2, put those through the sewing machine, all 4 at the one time. You don't have to make this whole thing at once. We're actually gonna make all 4 of these blocks at the same time. And so then you press towards the square because there's less bulk that way. So if I press this one this direction and this one this direction, and you can see that. No, you really can't. It's hard to tell on the back. But you press it this way, and this one you press this way, and then when you join these 2 pieces, they nest really well in together. And then I actually pressed my seams open when it got to, after I joined those 2 pieces together, okay? So when you're laying it out, don't feel like you have to lay out this whole thing on a design board and, you know, this one, this one, this one, this one. You don't have to do that. You can do this 4, stack all the pieces on top of each other, because this is the exact same block, all 4 of those. and then you can turn in the right directions. So then what I would do is I would grab one of these and then this little sashing and one of these, sew that together as a row. I sewed this together as a row, and then these together as a row. And that's how I did each one of these. So the other thing I was noticing when I was working on these is each one of these you could really use as a palette for another quilt, because you're putting, you know, when I'm grabbing from my basket, I'm trying different fabrics next to each other, and oh, I kind of like this one and don't like that one. But as I was sewing them, I'm like, that's a color palette right there for a quilt. So you could do the like a creamish color, and this is a little more of a purple, and then the browns and grays. That's a color palette for a quilt right there. Or this one. You know, the dark, the aqua blues, and then a mint green, and then this one little print, and then this one has a little darker of a gray. But that's a color palette right there. You could take that to your quilt store with a pattern that you have, and pick out fabrics just by, you made a little square here, you like this color palette, and that you can make a whole quilt in that color palette, or even in the grays and the reds with a little splash of yellow in there. I just thought that was interesting. You could really do that with each one of these blocks. Here's some of the others that I've done earlier in the year. It's a color palette right there for a quilt. Obviously red and green. You've probably made a Christmas quilt like that. Or even the orange and the green. You know, it's a burnt orange and the green. But I thought that was pretty cool when I was putting them together. I'm like, right here, you got the makings of not that you have to do, you know, 50 of these to make one quilt. I just mean the colors that you're using in one quilt block, because I wanted them to coordinate. But then that in itself could be a palette for another quilt using whatever design you had. But anyway, so my June blocks are done. So I will put this quilt along away until July. And in July, let's see, we have just one set of blocks. We're doing pinwheel blocks. So those shouldn't be too bad. And it's usually 4 of those. And here's a picture of one of those that they have on the front of the pattern. So I really like this quilt along. It's super easy to keep up with. It's only 4 blocks a month, and the same block, you know, sometimes you're doing 2 different blocks, so you may be doing 8. And I wanted to point out on the pattern itself, they are using the same brown fabric for every spool, and that is an option totally. I just decided to go scrappy because I was trying to use up the fabrics from this basket, but that is absolutely an option. Now, the one thing I am using that's constant, and I've mentioned this before, is I'm using a Christopher Thompson fabric called Blossom, and I have a whole bolt of this. Let me show you up close. This is a very nice neutral fabric to keep on hand. So I have a whole bolt of this. I usually keep a couple of different neutral whites, because I find even for scrappy quilts, you usually need some sort of a background fabric. And for many times for my color palette, it's white, or it's a off-white type of color. So I just keep a couple bolts of different neutrals like this, because if I'm starting a new project, that's the one kicker that's going to keep me from starting it, is if I don't have enough background fabric for something. So if I just keep a couple bolts of things that I like. So you may notice other quilts that I use or that I've made that I may have used this on those as well. But it's just a nice blender one. Just a little bit of a pattern to it. And I'll link this down below if you're interested. I'm not even sure if it's still available. But just a good hint, you might just buy a bolt of a fabric and to keep on hand for when you're starting those projects, and even if it's scrappy, that way you just have a background fabric that you can use. Another thing I wanted to show you is when I am making these blocks, one of the things I have next to my sewing machine are these clappers. And if you follow Lori Holt, you see that she uses them all the time too, and she's the one that got me started on these. There are 2 different sizes. This is the smaller one, and then here's the larger one. I have 4 of these that sit right next to my sewing machine. And when I am sewing, I have next to me, I have just a small little ironing board. Not even an ironing board. It's an old rotating cutting mat, and then I made my own little pressing board just out of some plywood. I covered it with some iron, the iron fabric, and then I covered it with just some yardage that I had, just so it looks pretty. It does wear out over time, you have to replace it. But I have that sitting right to my left, and so as I'm sewing and as I'm pressing, then I can just, I'm still sitting down, I just rotate my chair a little bit, and I'm pressing whatever I need to press right there next to me on the left. And I keep these right there too. So as I press something, and what's nice about that rotating cutting mat is I will press something and I'll set a clapper on it, and then I just rotate the cutting mat around, and then I have the other side. It's not very big. I mean, I'm talking, my cutting mat is maybe, the rotating cutting mat, I don't know, it's probably a 12-inch circle diameter. But sitting on top of that is the little ironing thing that I made, and it may be like 8 by 10. I mean, it's not huge, but it's enough that if I'm pressing some little pieces, next to me, then I can press it, I can set one of the clappers on top of it, and I can rotate that to the other side, and then I press it and rotate it again. The other one's usually cool enough at that point, and I just keep rotating them around. Just a system that I've developed over time. But I use these clappers because then it flattens the block, and it also cools it down a lot quicker, and which helps flatten it. So by keeping these right there next to me, I just set them on there. When I would finish not this week's, if you want to see this week's, so when I would finish this and I'm ironing on the back, I'd iron these or press these open, and then I would just set this on top of it and leave it there just for a minute or two. I don't leave it a tremendously long time. But the reason I'm using an old rotating cutting mat is because the heat of that iron does kind of warp that cutting mat some. I don't use it for trimming, for cutting, unless I'm in a dire circumstance, but I really don't use that for trimming or cutting anymore. But I like the rotation of it, kind of like the old Lazy Susans, you'd have in the cabinet, that so things rotate around. It's just a little easier just to keep things moving and in a process. So if you don't have any of these, I know, I have the Riley Blake ones. There are a lot of different companies that are doing this. The reason I like these, I like the roundness of them. I also like that they're inset right here. They're very easy to grab a hold of and to hold on to. I prefer this longer size. I only have one of the smaller ones, and to be honest, I really don't use the smaller one a lot. Even though it would fit on some of the blocks that I'm doing, I just tend to grab the larger ones. And I have 3 of these, and I have 1 of these, but I tend to use the longer ones more often. So one of those new tools I'm just so glad we have. It's been a lot of fun to use them. Really keeps things flat and cools them quickly. And I even, on my larger ironing board, I also keep a cutting mat on top of that. Not an ironing board. When I say ironing board, I'm thinking, ironing shirts, and that's not what it is. So I have a larger ironing surface in my sewing room, and it is probably 36 by 24, 28, something like that. And I have it covered with iron fabric and then other yardage on top of that. But then I also use that for my cutting station. So I will set a cutting mat on top of that. If I'm using the ironing part of it, where I've taken the cutting mat off, and I'm using the ironing part of it, and then I'm ready to put the cutting mat back on top of it, I will actually set these on top of that ironing surface and just move them around, rub them around, and it pulls the heat right out of that ironing fabric, and then I'm able to put my cutting mat back on top. Because if you do put your cutting mat back on top of a hot iron surface, it will warp it. It will. So I always cool it down with these, and just amazing how it quickly just cools that surface down. So you might want to pick yourself up some of these. I really like those. All right, so that is all the personal projects that I got done this week. But I do have some client finishes. So the first one I'm going to start is Sandy's quilt. It's up at the top. And if you notice, I have a Harry Potter quilt today too. So those Harry Potter fans will want to stay tuned for that one. And there's a third one down at the bottom that you can't see because he's covering it. But so I have 3 customer finishes today to show you. So here are pictures of the first one, and then we'll talk about it. So these first two quilts come from Sandy, and Sandy mailed these to me. This first one is called, the pattern is called Zen Cabin, and this is a pattern by Zen Chic, one of my favorite designers. I love her fabric, and most of this fabric, let me see, Sandy listed here, quotation, spotted and graphite is the gray border, word fabric on the back are all by Zen Chic, including the word band on the back. So most of this is Zen Chic fabric, if not all. And I will link as much of it as I can in the description if I can find links for it. But a modern looking quilt, so just a play off of the log cabin. You saw from the big picture how it's not the same ones, that even the color differences, you see the green here and then the green here, it gives your eye that optical illusion of things kind of off kilter a little bit. So a modern type design, really cute, really fun. And I love words, so I love any fabric that has words. It says love, weekend, extraordinary, enjoy, real life, everyday, celebrate, all kinds of things. Then you've got this yellow print that has that. You have this gray and black one, and actually on the back, Sandy pieced her backing, and on the back she has a stripe across the back that has that word print, and she's done a very nice job. That is kind of difficult to do. If you can keep it straight, it looks really good, but if it gets off, it doesn't. So she did a nice job of keeping everything straight. But that is a word fabric as well. So enjoy, extraordinary, it says the same thing. Everyday magic, celebrate, so really cute. Really cute. Love the colors of this one. The oranges and greens and yellows. So let's talk about the pantograph. So Sandy does not like tight quilting. So when we started talking about designs, because not every design on the long arm, I can make the design as large or as small within reason. I can only make it as large as will fit within the bars of my thing. And so when choosing designs, sometimes it's difficult to see what they're going to look like blown up. Are you going to lose the dimensions? Are you going to lose the design that's there? Is it going to get lost in the bigness of it? And that can happen even in the smallness if you reduce it down too much as well. So because Sandy had some questions about some different designs, I gave her some ideas, and we still had some questions about whether it's going to look good or not. So what I did is I put some practice fabric on the long arm, and I just stitched out some larger ones. So, and I just thought it would be fun if you got to see those too, and just to see how different designs. This is actually the one that Sandy chose. This is called the diagonal plaid bias cut. Now I stitched these on black just because that's the fabric I had. And you've seen this same pantograph, much smaller. I've used it on, I used this one on t-shirt quilts. I've used this one on baby quilts, where the box is down to about that big. So when I blew it up, I really like how it looks. I think it translates really well, being large. I just thought it was a very good, yeah, I was very impressed with how it stitched out large. I just felt it did nice design, nice coverage, but left those big open spaces so that it's, a little fluffier in those areas. And that's actually the one that Sandy chose. Another one that I did for her to see, this one is also a diagonal, what is this one called? Diagonal plaid hexes, I think is what it's called. So a little more geometric than the other one with the rounded corners. I think this one would have been a good choice too, but I think this one does really well. Almost a holograph type look to this one when you blow it up big. But this is a good choice too. I like how it gives the big open spaces, but you still keep the shape of the design, and still adds even a modern type look to a quilt with this one. The other one I stitched out was called Cool Beans, and I used this recently, a little bit smaller on one recently, probably a couple weeks back, if you can remember that one. But this one I stitched out as large as I could, and that's as large as I could do it. So it is bigger than a few weeks ago when I did it, but this one too, I think keeps its design really well. And I was happy with this. And so any one of these three really worked out well, being blown up bigger. But it was a good practice to just throw on some practice fabric and just to see what it stitched like, just to be sure that that's what we really wanted. And I think it worked really well. And I'll keep these now because they're a good sample thing to keep and to show people different sizes, because I have this also as a smaller one, and just to see the difference in it. So diagonal plaid, bias cut is what that one's called. And so here you can see it on the quilt. I liked the diagonal designs because the log cabin is such a horizontal, left to right, vertical, horizontal, vertical design. By adding that diagonal, we still have the straight lines, but we have the diagonal on the diagonal, and added some interest there with that. So really cute. I think this worked out really well. I think Sandy's really going to be happy. We used this was a medium gray thread, and it blended with the backing, it blended with the side. You can see it. Let's see, there. Shows up on the colors when you get close, but gives you that texture when you're far away from it. Actually, you can't even see it there, can you? Kind of blends in. There we can. All right, so next up is Sandy's Harry Potter quilt. And I will show you, I'll do some extended footage of this quilt because it is very large and there are so many different blocks, and I'm sure the Harry Potter fans are going to want to see this up close. So I'll do some extended pictures of this one so that you can see it, and then we'll discuss it. Sandy's second quilt is this Harry Potter quilt, and this is for her granddaughter, and I am sure she is going to be thrilled. All of the fabrics in this are Bella solids, and so you've got the bright colors here. This is a pattern by Kelli Fanin, so I'm sure if you are a Harry Potter fan, you are going to want to pick up this pattern. How cute is that? So almost a very pixelated look, all done in squares. All the characters, all of the, it's really cute, even down to the, all what you saw, the glasses. They're just so cute. Just really, really cute. So I like all the solids and all the bright colors with it. The backing is the same purple as the background fabric, is the backing fabric as well. And so on this one we chose, again, we auditioned several different pantographs trying to decide which one we wanted. We kind of talked about the Hexy one, and then we kind of talked about the Cool Beans one. Then we decided to look at some wizard prints, and so Anne Bright Designs has a couple of Harry Potter they're not called Harry Potter, but you know that's what they are. Pantographs. And so we chose this one called Wizard Sky, and I did I did stitch it out on some of this black fabric so that we could see what it would look like. And I think this will give you a better idea of what it looks like, because it's kind of lost on the quilt some, which is good, because you want this quilt, you want the design of the quilt to show up and the pantograph just to be a secondary. So I stitched this out so you can see the pantograph, and this is the same size. This is as large as I could print it, because that is what will fit within my the bars. And you wouldn't want to go, I really don't think you would want to go much smaller on this, because look at the size of the eyes right there. I mean, that's like smaller than my finger or my fingernail. And so I just don't think that this is a design that you would want to go much smaller on. I think that would just be too tight. The tension on that would be horrible to try to keep being that tight of a circle. So I really think this is the perfect size for this design. You can see all the elements there. And then let me show it to you on the quilt. We did this in a gray, in the same medium gray thread. And so you can kind of see the design. So once you get up closer, but when you're this far apart, we really want to see the characters and the character of the quilt and the design of the quilt. That's really what we want to shine. And so not until you get in close can you see the detail of that pantograph. So I think the gray was a good choice because it blended really well with the purple. It may stand out a little bit on the lighter prints, but we didn't want it to stand out so much on all of this purple. So really, really cute. Sandy, you did a great job on this quilt. I can't imagine how long this took to piece together. The blocks, you know, these are a good, wow, 24 inch blocks. They're big blocks. This is a big quilt. The final size of the quilt, I have it here, is 78 by 98. So it's a very good size quilt. Work really well on a twin bed. I think Sandy said her granddaughter may hang it up on the wall and use it as a decoration. But very nice. So I will link that pattern down below if you are someone that would like to make this. I'm sure you're going to want to get your hands on that pattern. So I have one more customer finish today, and it's this Christmas quilt down at the bottom. So here are some pictures. So this is Ruth's quilt, and Ruth is local to me. And this was a block of the month that she did a while back from one of the local quilt stores here near us. And so this is the second one of these I have done. I did one for another client, and I did a totally different pantograph on that one. So on this one, I chose what's called Christmas Poinsettia, and this was the first time I had quilted this one. I actually picked this pattern, this pantograph up after Christmas this past year. So this was a brand new one to me, and I did stitch it out because I wanted to see the size of this one. So while I had that black fabric on there, I stitched this one as well, so you can see the design a little bit better here. So the poinsettia, you know, you got the middle flower and then the outer one. There's two of them, and then it repeats like that over and over. And this one's kind of hard to see because I've done it in, this was a green, it's called an olive thread, so that's why it's hard to see on that black fabric. But that is the color that I used on this quilt. It was an olive green. Thought that worked better than a red. I did audition a red from this one. And I know poinsettias are normally red, but I really felt like the red was overpowering. And I felt the green gave you the design, complemented the front is very stars, very straight, very angular. And so by adding in the flowers, it added some softness, but it also complemented the backing fabric. And this is the backing fabric, and that's where I really got the idea to use that poinsettia. Now, not always do I use the same pantograph as a backing. Sometimes we do. Like there was a circle one here recently that when we did the bubbles, and it kind of mimicked, it just looked like part of the pattern. And that's kind of the same thing with this one. The poinsettias just blend right in with the ones that are there. So I felt that was a good choice. Look very similar. And I think the red would have been too overpowering, and it would have tended to overshine the rest of the quilt. So if you notice from the big pictures of this block of the month, I've not seen the directions for this at all, but what I like about this one is it's not just 4 rows of 3 blocks. I really like how this one, you have some larger blocks, you have some smaller blocks. It has to be put together a certain way because you have some that nest inside each other, and in my looking at it, I almost wonder if, especially some of these bigger ones, if some of these outside edges were actually a part of a different block, but when you joined it with this one, then it finished the design of this block as well. I hope that made sense, what I'm trying to say there. The designer did a really nice job. I know the local quilt store is called Not Your Average Quilter, and Mike is the man's name who's the designer and the owner of that quilt store, and he does some really incredible art quilts, and this block of the month was just really pretty. Very, like I said, I always like a pattern that I can't figure out. Because I feel if I can see a pattern, then it's not worth buying to me because I can figure out the pattern on my own. So something like this, I'm like, he's got me intrigued. I'm like, how did he put that together? And so I like the artistry. I like the thinking and the process he's gone into in designing this. And absolutely his name matches Not Your Average Quilter because he is incredible. And so I really like this. I don't even know if this pattern is available. I'll do some research, and if I can find something, I will link it down below. If not, I will just put his shop name. And he is here in Indiana, about an hour away from me. So just a really neat. And I love the shading. I noticed when I was taking some pictures. And I'm assuming this was a quilt kit, not just a block of the month where they picked their own. Because the other quilt that I did like this was the exact same fabrics, or what I remember to be very similar. So I love the shading of this one. How that darker red and the lighter red with the blacks, and the design that it makes just from using different colors of fabric and the shading there. Just really nice. I love pinwheels too. Really nice quilt. So this will go back to Ruth tonight. Ruth is a member of my quilt guild. She was actually a client before we were in quilt guild together, but so this will go back to her. Tonight is quilt guild, and I look forward to that all the time each month, and so got some fun things going on there as well this evening. So that is all I have for you this week. I know it's been a kind of little shorter video, but like I said, it's been a whopper of a week here. And so I am thrilled with the things that I have gotten done, and glad everyone's feeling better. I hope at your home that everyone's doing well. You're enjoying your summertime, hopefully getting some vacation time, at least enjoying the sunshine and the warmer weather outside. So I hope you have a great week, and I will see you back here next week. And my motto is every quilt is worth finishing. So if you have a project that you need finished, a quilt that you need to have long armed, I hope you'll get a hold of me. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.